Well, now I don't have to ask that question of who's talked or seen or been to SpaceCube, so thanks, Scott. But really good to see so many people have been there, and also probably a lot of the people in the room are members as well. But I've been reflecting a bit. I'm on annual leave, so probably for the first time in 3 years since we set up SpaceCube, and had the chance to reflect a bit about what the last 3 years has been about, what it's taken to get there, and then what it's going to take over the next sort of 3 to 10 years. But really, I started SpaceCube and have great support from a really supportive team and board. But started SpaceCube about 3 years ago. It took about a year and a half of work before that to actually get to a point where we could actually open SpaceCube. And really it was about, over the next sort of 40 years, there's massive changes coming. There's huge challenges we're going to face environmentally, socially, economically. We're starting to see that right now. I think this is the tip-off point for Western Australia to sort of have its global financial crisis. But what we weren't looking at was how are we supporting people coming up with new ideas to tackle these big social, environmental and economic challenges. So what we looked at with SpaceCube was lowering the barrier for people to start up their ideas, and that's really what it's designed to do. How do you have a space that people can go who have ideas to tackle those different things, get access to mentors, space, meeting rooms, events, all the things they need to get their ideas off the ground. And as a lot of you have been there, so it's been pretty successful to date. And reflecting on that, it really has grown through the community of people that we've developed at SpaceCube. It's a mix of designers, developers, bigger corporates, government, not-for-profit, environmental organisations, whole range of different organisations and businesses working in the same space, all working together to, in their own way, change the world and have a big impact on the world. So the last 3 years it's been a roller coaster. That's how it works, starting up business. I think we're 3 years in, so we're sort of through that valley of death that comes with starting any new enterprise. And now we're really able to reflect and look at, right, what's next? Where are we going? What are the opportunities and where do we see things sort of changing? But I guess what's been really good for me is to see the people that have developed through SpaceCube. We're now having people who are starting to leave SpaceCube because their businesses have grown so large, which is really the ultimate goal of it, but also looking at how do we keep them connected in with that community, with those other people to mentor back, because that's really what building a focused and a resilient startup community is about. And I think over the last few days you would have seen building a city is about. So what we've really focused on is how do we reduce that time to market for different organisations? How do we provide the support, the facilities, to get them from idea stage, and this is done in a few ways. We have sort of casual events like morning startup, startup weekend, which is a 54-hour marathon where people can start up their ideas to within 54 hours, get a diverse team together, move their ideas forward really quickly. Then what we started to see is as this group of people has grown, SpaceCube now has over 550 members, we've started to see that new mechanisms of support are developing. So through shining a light on all the good work that people in Perth and in SpaceCube are doing, we're having corporates coming to the table. So AmCom setting up AmCom Upstart, which is an accelerator program where you get $40,000 and 3 months of intensive mentoring to start up your enterprise. RAC SeedSpark, which was looking at some of RAC's big challenges and how can entrepreneurs help them solve some of their problems. Recently we had Hack the Festival, which was about getting artists and developers together to come up with new interesting artworks or ways to support artists. So these are really designed to get different people together, because I think that's the key thing, is that diversity. You generally don't know what's going to come out of that. So what we're really focusing on is how do you build that support mechanism, that ecosystem of support for people coming up with those new ideas. But I guess, it's been really good. We ran a crowdfunding campaign to open Level 9 last year, which raised $60,000 from 253 different people. But I guess what we were looking at was, a lot of you have been there, SpaceCube's been successful to date, but what's it going to take over the next 3 years? And some research came out, which I think will come up in a second. There's no clicker here. But basically, what we've seen is that some research around what it's actually going to take to have Perth producing billion-dollar companies or change-making companies or companies that are tackling those big challenges. And it's early for this graph and it's blurry because we had to sort of cut and paste it. But basically you can apply this. Yesterday there was a few comments around, you need thousands of creative people coming up with new ideas and executing on those. So I can put a number on that for you. It's actually about 20,000. We need 20,000 entrepreneurs, innovators and change makers in Perth to come up, in Perth and Western Australia more broadly, to tackle some of these big challenges. I'll just explain this graph. So this is for the tech community, but this could apply to any sort of ecosystem for Western Australia, where the yellow is sort of where we are now. So we've got about 2,500 to 3,000 entrepreneurs in Perth. And this is sort of a staged funnel of what the success rates of how people grow their enterprise. So 2,500 in yellow. The next stage is sort of seed funding. So only about 25% make it through to the next stage. Then 10% make it through to the next stage of their business growth, which is sort of the early growth. Growth stage is down, actually 65%, because by that point people have a lot of support. But so that yellow is right now. The grey and the black is where we need to be by 2025. So we need 20,000 entrepreneurs, innovators and change makers in Perth and in Western Australia in order to create those bigger billion-dollar companies and create real change. So this was sort of that moment for me where it was like, what we're doing is sort of playing around the edges. SpaceCube's good, a lot of you have been there, but the change that needs to happen is going to require universities, government, it's going to require corporations, a whole range of different people working, a whole range of different organisations and industries working together, schools, to get that 20,000 people. And we think it's achievable. We think that's a realistic goal. And if we don't do that, we're not going to get the change we need. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at this. And this we looked at this last September. So just after we'd finished the crowdfunding campaign, we're like, yeah, this is all great. But when you look at this, 550 members compared to 20,000, there's a long way to go. But I think everyone in this room, this is really can you just click forward to the next slide? That's really the goal for us now, is how do we get 20,000 entrepreneurs, creatives, innovators coming up with their ideas, going to market, going through those different stages? Because if we don't have that critical mass, we're not going to see those changes. So I wanted to sort of leave you with that, because that's the challenge. When we started out with this, it was just about lowering the barrier for people. But now there's some really tangible targets around how do we get people, or how are we as a society, as Western Australia, going to compete in this global environment, which is rapidly changing. Things are changing really quickly. We're facing big challenges now, and even more in the future, faster and faster. And we think it's going to take a lot of people working on different things, different levels of support to move them through those different stages. And we see SpaceCubed as an environment where that can happen, where those barriers can be broken down, and where people can really make that change. So thank you all for listening. A lot of you have been to SpaceCubed, but for those who haven't, we have open house Friday morning, so feel free to drop in. And yeah, look forward to seeing you then. So thank you.